The challenge layups, Phil and John are back, and we are not better than ever because Annabelle is not here. I got ripped last week because I keep saying the Survivor Specialist, Phil and Alexa are back. Well, I talked to Alexa in the past week. We decided we're just going to change the name of our channel to The Specialist, but to call myself it should be an absolute joke. So we're the challenge layups because that's what people tend to call the people who aren't very good at the game. John, no offense to you. No offense to Annabelle, who forgot it was only an hour. So she is not with us tonight, but that is okay. Annabelle, we still are okay with you being on in the future. We will not hold this against you in any way, shape, or form. But yes, it is just the Specialist channel. So now it suddenly makes sense that we're doing the challenge. Although, before we get into this, I'm going to have to do a quick commercial break because we need at least 23 of those in the next hour. Otherwise, it's not satisfying at all. John, I'm going to go do my commercial break. What you can talk if you want, but you might also need a commercial break to build suspense here.
I know. I think that I have to just get halfway through a thought and then just let it cut to commercial, because is there any possible way to cram more commercials into an hour than what we had tonight?
They had, 2 in the last challenge, which is what really annoyed me, because it wasn't that dramatic of a challenge. It was cool, good for them, but there were 15 minutes left of the episode when those two girls went down there to compete, and there were 2 minutes left of the episode when they went walking out. That is crazy. That was not a 13-minute or 14-minute challenge. That was not meant to be that. It went exactly how we were predicting last week. I think I had said on this podcast, it's going to be Gabby versus Nany 100%, and we can just book that right now. And sure enough, it was Gabby versus Nany 100%. Nobody put up a fight on it at all. It's kind of exactly what we anticipated. I wonder if we're going to be seeing hour-long episodes from here on out, or if they're going to be going back to hour and a half. I don't know what's going to happen with that, because this was definitely an episode that didn't have much to cover, and I wonder if they purposely made it an hour because of that.
Yeah, I kind of felt like that. I'm pretty sure next week's episode's back to being an hour and a half.
Okay.
And it almost felt like we were missing an aspect of the challenge today because it was so short. And maybe that's just because of what we've been seeing so far this season and with how being used to that hour and a half. But we really just saw 2 challenges, and Fessy talking about his love life. And that was about it.
Yeah, there was no opening. That's what it was. I think because there was nothing at the beginning, that's why it felt weird, because normally we'll have them talk about the ramifications of Nam leaving or whatever happened. And instead we heard about Nam's testicles because he was already carved up, according to CT, which was very, very, very funny. But we really there really wasn't much going on in this episode. And because we knew it was going to be Gabby versus Nany, it would have been nice if they would have built out something else. I feel like nothing else was built out. I thought the first challenge was a pretty good challenge. It just seemed like more than half of the contestants weren't playing, as we then hear TJ rip them. It was CT, Corey and Gabby, and Leroy and Casey. There's only 5 people who tried out of 12 because CT wasn't participating. That's not good. That's not a good look for the show, and that's not very fun to watch. And I think that took away from a pretty big production that they definitely wanted to get their money's worth on.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of went all out with this, going with this intense escape room-esque challenge, where the first task was to hold this really heavy medicine ball for some reason for an unspecified amount of time. Didn't really seem to have anything to do with anything else, but I guess just to warm everyone up. And then, this challenge maybe it would have been a little more exciting if more people were competing. It did get a little bit entertaining with how close Corey and Gabby actually got to coming back into it. But in the end, it was just Leroy and Casey pacing the field the entire time.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with the challenge, and we've kind of talked about this throughout the season, but the motivations now aren't always to win. And I think that that's a problem, because the motivations tonight, actually, some of the people want to lose because they want to change partners. Like Fessy didn't want to win because then he can't be stolen. And I think when that's happening, yes, that creates a different dynamic. And I'm not saying it's a broken element, but when you have a challenge like this, there's going to be people who are straight up like, I'm not going to drink stupid cheese water or whatever it is, because that's not worth my time and my effort. especially since winning is actually going to end up hurting my game, not helping my game. And I think that's something that, the challenge, I guess they probably have taken into account, or maybe they're okay with it happening. But when I'm watching and I'm like, okay, there's only really 7 people maybe who would care to win this. The rest are trying to not win. It doesn't matter to them, or it just doesn't matter enough for them to win. Whereas Leroy and Casey, they want to run this final together because they are such a strong team. There's a lot of other people out there who are like Corey and Gabby, they either want to win so they can throw themselves in, but really they were going to be going down there tonight no matter what. People were going to give Nany and Gabby what they wanted because it was the right thing to do. And this is a show where when the players are going to come back season after season, it only makes sense to keep those relationships open. So I think it was a good challenge. I like the medicine ball aspect to tire them out, and they went for 2 full hours, which is a very long time. And I kind of like that idea. But when your goal isn't necessarily to win, it's going to take something away.
Yeah. And that's kind of just what we came into with this challenge. I'm glad we at least got the confessional from Fessy saying, I don't want to win this challenge because I don't want to be with Anissa anymore. At least we got that aspect from him. Whereas these other partners, we didn't really get anything out of them as to why they weren't doing anything. Like, Nany feels so comfortable with her position in everything in the house that she didn't even feel she had to compete to ensure herself going down this week. And that's, I think, where the bigger problem comes from it. Is like, if the person who is trying to get their gold skull doesn't even need to compete, what's the point of it?
Yeah, agreed. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you make that more interesting. Because again, I think this was a good challenge. I think it's an interesting challenge. I think that the dynamic of it is cool. I like the idea of the escape room and chaos and torture and eating all this gross stuff and drinking gross. That's always a fun thing. But yeah, like, how do you make it so that everybody wants to win just as bad? And I almost think that the best way to do that is give away an award at the end of everything. So how Burger King made them Whopper Club members for life or whatever the hell it was. I think that you need to do something like that with every challenge, even if it's $1,000 here and there, whatever. People are going to play hard for $1,000 because $1,000, that's going to cover something in your life. And so I think that that's the type of motivation that MTV needs to get out of this, of these pairings, and how can they figure out how to make that happen? So I think that's the easiest way to fix this, but then also that comes into sponsors and things along those lines. How do you get who's going to be putting up that money? At the end of the day, to approve an MTV show, $1,000 isn't very, very much. Let's be real here, especially the longest running reality TV show in history. It's not that much for them to do this.
No, exactly. Especially when they do just have this $1 million prize this season anyways. Like, just change some of the budget a little bit so that there is some sort of incentive for these contestants to always be competing at this point. And maybe they didn't prepare for it. Maybe they weren't prepared for this aspect of, I don't need to try at this point because they have their gold skulls already. There is no real necessity for them to be going all out anymore. So maybe that's just something that the producers didn't even consider going into this. And they didn't think, at some point they're just going to stop trying.
Yeah, I haven't watched previous seasons, so I don't know if this has been something that's come up before or not. I know gold skulls or skulls in general are kind of a new thing, but I don't really know if it's been something that's come up or if it hasn't. But I just think that it's something that they need to think about. They need to think about how can we make it so that CT and Cam want to win this just as bad as Leroy and Casey, because once you have the gold skull, the goal is to win so you can protect your gold skull. The other problem with tonight is everybody knew that it was going to be a female elimination. TJ's little gag at the end isn't working anymore because everybody knows it's going to be a female elimination. It wouldn't make sense for it to be a male elimination. So now the men who don't have partners they like Fessy, are trying to game the system. And then the men who do have partners they like Leroy, are trying to win, but Leroy's the only one who's sold enough on his partner. So how do you make it and then the other problem is the people who do have gold skulls don't feel that it's necessary to protect themselves, especially if you're one of the men, because you know you're not going to lose your gold skull tonight. And the women, if you feel confident enough in your alliance, then you're just saying to yourself, screw it. You're going to send in somebody else anyway. So I feel like there's got to be that prep. Courtney C said that's what's great about older seasons. If you won a daily, you won money into an individual or team bank account. That's a really, really good idea. And that's something that I think needs to be done on this season.
Yeah. I mean, in older seasons, the prize pool at the end was significantly less. And there were sponsored prizes for all the dailies. There was like, you were winning like car stereo systems and stuff like that. But there was like some sort of prize for winning the dailies. So it did give you some sort of incentive to actually like try in them. And I don't know, maybe this cast just feels safe with each other. But like we are getting down to that point now where they can't feel safe with each other anymore because there's so few people left, right? They're going to have to start cannibalizing each other eventually.
Yeah, we're down to 12. And I'm assuming they're going to go to 8. That's what it seems like. It doesn't seem like they're going to stop at 10 because it wouldn't be fair to Corey or Big T, who are now paired up with each other and still don't have skulls and really haven't had a chance yet. So I don't know. I think that there's probably going to be at least 2 more male and 2 more female eliminations. Now you have somebody like Kyle who doesn't have motivation to win because he wants to get rid of Anissa. That's an interesting concept. Now, granted, it is part of the game. It does create an interesting dynamic that you don't see in many game shows, which is not wanting to win. Normally in a game show, in a reality TV show, the goal the entire time is to win. Or, in Survivor, they will sit out for food and challenges and things like that. But very rarely do you see somebody just straight up not try in a challenge. If they're going to be in the challenge, they're going to at least try. And if they can't make it further, they can't make it further. If they can't do something, they can't do something. But I don't know. Now, we just had an episode where you knew it was going to happen the entire time. Now it seems like next week there's going to be a little bit more chaos involved with it. But how much chaos are we going to get with whatever the daily is if, again, some of the people aren't trying? And I think TJ might have given them a stern talking to this episode, so hopefully it doesn't happen again next week.
I think everyone has to start trying now because there's no way someone with a gold skull doesn't go down in the elimination now.
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Because Corey's the only one without a gold skull for the men. Big T's the only one without a gold skull for the women. Somebody with a gold skull is going down next week. They're not necessarily going against Corey and Big T, but at least one person is going down there and has to defend their skull.
And do we have a finale date yet or no?
I think we do, but I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Okay, because the reason I'm asking that is because TJ did his whole, you all think you know what's going on and you don't know what's going on. Yes, I think we all do know what's going on at this point. But I wonder if that's his way of saying next week, Corey and Big T are both going to be running for something. And then there's going to be 2 more episodes and then a final. So if that would be 4 weeks, I think that would put you somewhere middle of April, which might make sense. And maybe that's what's going to happen is next week, you're going to have a man and a woman get eliminated. That's why it's back to an hour and a half, 2 more episodes, and then a final. That could very well be it. Or I'm just making stuff up and don't actually have any clue. But that's the only thing I could think that would make sense for him saying, you don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we know there's 19 episodes, including the double finale or the double reunion. So that would mean there are 17 episodes in total, and this is episode 13. So that would be 4 more episodes.
So that would make sense. That would line up. So next week you do double elimination, week after male, week after female, week after finale. And that's the final. So there you go. So maybe that's what he's saying is because 2 people haven't gotten to compete in this at all, rather than even letting you choose, they're both going to be going in there no matter what. And now it's going to be a matter of what pairing are they going against. I could see a man versus woman like a pair versus pair elimination next week. That could be interesting to give Corey and Big T the chance, but I do think they still want to mix up the teams as much as they can, which also bodes well because as we saw with last week's episode, which was one of the most entertaining of the entire season, when you have all that chaos of now there's 4 rogue and whatever, I think that's what's going to end up happening here next week as they say, great, let's get rid of a man, let's get rid of a woman, let's get Corey and Big T their chance to get their skulls. We're going to have 1 more elimination for each gender, and then we're done. I think that will make next week fun. Unfortunately, there's going to be dud episodes in a show. This season has had some really dud episodes. This was probably, I think, the most boring and worst one. But I get that it's going to happen. When it comes to reality TV, sometimes there's just really nothing you can do about it.
And it's really funny because we've been talking about this aspect of like the MTV factor of the challenge adding to the entertainment of the episodes. And they really tried to force it with this like Fessy Gabby thing this week, but it just wasn't entertaining to watch.
No, there just wasn't much to it. And I think it just comes down to the fact of, like, what were they in, a supply closet? I don't even know what they were in. And then when they're hooking up in the room, I like, great. And it's funny. And like, I like Gabby walking out and saying what she said, but I do think it's a problem that they haven't been able to travel. I do think that definitely hurts the show, because I think it's way more interesting to watch Gabby and Fessy at a bar with locals as well. And then that can cause that MTV type drama of Gabby's like, why is Fessy talking to that girl? Who is this Icelandic girl? And then that creates drama. And I think that's better drama. It's hard to manufacture a lot of drama when at the end of the day, watching two people hook up on an MTV show is not nearly as exciting as watching two people hook up on a Survivor show, because Survivor, you don't expect it. On MTV, you do expect it. And so I think when you're expecting it and that's kind of the extent of it, it's less exciting because you've seen it before tenfold, so how can you make it even more exciting? And now that Gabby's gone, it really does just feel like, okay, it petered out. And now what's our MTV entertainment for the next couple weeks? We don't have Josh. We don't have Devin. And now we don't have Fessy and Gabby. What do we have in these next 4 weeks?
Hopefully some animosity between Anissa and Nany after Anissa specifically asked Nany not to screw her over.
But then she did say you do what you have to do. That was said.
I know. It's so, like, fun fact, guys. If you're on a reality TV show and you say, do what you have to do, you're giving permission for someone to screw you over.
Yeah.
Don't ever end a conversation with, do what you have to do.
Rafe Judkins made an entire career on that. But yeah, it's great. And then you talk about that, and I hope that there is some backlash next week between what ended up happening with Anissa and Nany. And I also hope we get more of the Big T and CT thing, because that totally took a backseat this week. And in an hour episode, you might say, oh, well, they didn't have enough time. This episode was sparse. This was driving through the Western United States. Like, there was nothing there. And yet they still did not manage to wrap that up at all. And so I'm wondering why they chose to do that, or if it was just blown out of proportion for TV purposes. I got a lot of shit last week. I don't care. I'll take it. But I got a lot of crap that was just saying I was wrong. I firmly believe I wasn't, so I don't care. But we didn't get anything else from it, even though it was in the previously on and nothing ended up happening. And it looks like we're going to get some drama between CT and Cam. It doesn't feel like that's going to be a duo that actually runs together in the final, whether it's because somebody wins and steals the other's partner, or if one of them actually does get thrown down again.
Yeah, it was really interesting seeing CT have that regret in that daily today, especially in something so easy, right? Like, it's an eating challenge. I get it. Ram's testicles are not appetizing.
Mm-hmm. John knows.
I do. Personal experience, obviously. But just do it.
Yeah.
Like, it's meat, right? Like, I get it. But, like, Cam wasn't even trying. She wasn't trying at all. And CT's just saying there, like, why did I do this? Like, he makes that good point in his confessional. You know who would have been trying in that daily? It was Big T.
Well, and that's why I think, CT obviously playing it for the cameras last week. I don't care what anybody says. This is a hard show to say, I'm going to just think about the final all the time. Because right now there's too many things switching back and forth. And yes, nobody is going to take Big T from CT. But if there's an eating portion of the final, is Cam going to do it? You don't know. And it seems like there's definitely going to be an eating and drinking portion of the final. One, because TJ was talking about it a lot tonight, but two, because it doesn't seem like they have the means to do much else on this show right now. So that's definitely going to be something they put in. Well, if Cam can't do that, what good did you do yourself, especially if Cam can just get stolen from you at some point anyway? Like, I get wanting to get rid of Big T this close to the final, but there's still too much time for Cam to be stolen from you. There's still too much time for somebody to steal you from Cam. And you don't know what is going to be in the final. I get that Cam doesn't really have many flaws, but clearly eating and drinking gross stuff is one of her flaws.
Yeah, but she also used one of her strengths to ensure that Leroy won that challenge too, right?
Yeah.
Like, they flipped over that tray for that math equation. And I was like, Casey's worst enemy, basic arithmetic.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently it is also Leroy's worst enemy. But Cam's just like standing there spouting off the answers for them.
Yeah. And is that what they're going to try to do in the final? Are they going to work together as two different teams? Like, that's something that could happen, because Leroy and Casey might still be trying to figure out that math equation. But then again, how did Corey and Gabby do it? Corey was asking Fessy. Like, nobody figured this out on their own tonight. It was all help. And I'm fine with that. That's all fair game as far as I'm concerned. But that's Cam's strength. You better hope that that's in the final. Otherwise, CT, you might have made the wrong choice if it's eating balls.
I just don't understand why these competitors freak out about math equations, because there's always math in the challenge every year, and it's always the exact same thing. It's like operation of orders, or
order of operations.
Order of operations.
Order of words, John. Order of
words. The same thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's always order of operations and something more than 2 digits. So just practice that before you go on the challenge, and you should be fine, because math is not hard.
It's please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And I think it's the same reason why people get scared of math in general. Like, when you're in high school, middle school, whatever it is, people just don't like math. And I think it's because it is almost a foreign language. You know, it's something that you don't speak it all the time, but it really comes down to a focus thing more than anything in a lot of instances. And I think for a lot of the people on this show, you're going to know 6 times 3 is 18. Now figure out how to do the rest of that math problem. If it's 416 times 3, figure it out. 3 times 6, 3 times 1, 3 times 4, write it down. Like, that's what you have to do. And I just think that a lot of people, they just panic with it. Like you said, how do you stop panicking with that? Well, maybe you don't need to, when you can just turn around and say, hey, honey, what do I do to make this happen? And she just helps you make it happen.
And the biggest thing with this particular equation that was there today, you had to find 2 numbers and then add them together, or subtract them, or whatever it was.
I think it was subtract. Yeah.
It was. So there are 2 of you on the team. One of you handles the first half of the equation. The other handles the second half. You're done. You're done. You don't even have to do a full math equation. You just have to do part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy. And because it really seemed like they were like really struggling to like write it out and stuff. And I get that. There are a lot of people who learn math and need to visualize it. There are a lot of times where I'm doing a math equation and I'll start like skywriting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I get it. But just approach the equation better. That's what it comes down to, is they were so frantic about it's like they saw numbers, they froze, and they just didn't take that second to breathe and think, 2 separate equations, bring them together.
Yeah. I agree. And it ended up working out because all they had to do was ask Cam, and then all Corey had to do was ask. I think it was Fessy, right? I think it was Fessy.
Yeah, it was.
But that's all they had to do was ask, and it was funny to watch Cam, like, you know, fake writing it down with her fake pen and paper and figuring it out and getting it right, because I think the pressure was also off of Cam. I think Leroy and Casey were the most paranoid, and it's funny to me that they were trying so hard, and I know that they want to keep their pairing together. But in what instance were Gabby or Corey, if they won, going to go against Leroy and Casey? It was just never going to happen. Gabby was never going to go against Casey because Casey was going to beat the crap out of her. So I think it's interesting that they were so worked up and the adrenaline was pumping so hard on them. They really were having that hard time focusing because they didn't have much to lose in this challenge, much like many of the other people playing today.
I think they're really scared to lose each other as partners, right? Like it's the opposite of what Fessy's approach to this challenge was, where, okay, if we lose this, there is a chance someone steals you from me. And it kind of makes sense, right? And we haven't really seen it. We kind of almost saw that when CT ended up taking Cam, right? I was talking a lot how it made sense for him to take Casey in that spot. So Casey's definitely someone you consider taking. Leroy is definitely shown himself to be a very strong competitor. He even said at this episode, this is his best challenge yet. He's at peak performance right now. So any one of these guys could be stolen at any point. So it makes sense trying to be the double agents to prevent that.
Yeah, it does make sense. I guess it confuses me why they were so stressed about it. And then also I get a little confused when I look at it, and I not confused, but if you're Leroy, the odds of you being stolen by Gabby or Nani are not very high because Fessy's there, and it seems like they're going to take Fessy no matter. Given Gabby's 100% going to take Fessy, and it was like we were 99% sure Nani was also going to take Fessy. So I think Leroy was still a little safe there. I get wanting to play it safe, wanting to keep yourself in a good position, all of that. It just was surprising. I love that they played it to win. I love that. And I love that they played it as hard as they could. I was just surprised how flustered they got. Even though this wasn't a back against the wall type challenge, and yet they were still super flustered, which surprised me. They really did.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the other thing is that this daily challenge didn't really have anyone against the wall either. Because, again, we come down to that, obviously, Nani and Gabby are going down there, right? Like, Nani's friends with most of the house, so anyone's going to put her down there. And they need a gold skull, and they're the only two women without gold skulls who are eligible to be put in. It was that deliberation today, right? Where it's just like, Nani and Gabby need gold skulls. They want to go down. We're cool with that, right?
Yeah, and the deliberation was incredibly boring because there was nothing to talk about. It didn't get exciting until it was, well, who are you going to take as your partner? Are you going to stay with me? And Kyle is so good with milking it for the camera. I love how he had TJ in tears laughing at the end of this episode because Kyle he's been like the bad news bears this whole season. It just seems like everything that can go wrong does go wrong for him. Corey has now lost seven partners or six partners. I don't even know. It's absolutely insane. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it would have been better had Big T been eligible as well. And again, this isn't the challenge's fault. So for any diehard challenge fans, I'm not ripping the challenge for this. I get that it's not their fault that so many people have been medevaced and so many people have been pulled from the game for different reasons and blah, blah, blah. But it does suck that without Big T being there, I think there's more incentive for Nani to not quit. There's more incentive for Gabby. There's more incentive for whoever's paired with Big T because those three women know that they have to get in there to battle it out. Otherwise, they might not get a chance because there's probably going to be two more female eliminations. So what can you do that it adds that third element, that triangle element of, okay, who's going to be the person who gets left out? And I think we all, because Big T's the one who's going to be left out, none of the women who had skulls are going to screw each other over because they're all aligned with each other. The only one they're not aligned with is Amber B, but Amber B probably wipes the floor with Nani in tonight's challenge. So they weren't going to put Nani up against Amber B at all.
Well, they're also, Amber B's still part of the Big Brother Alliance too, right?
True.
She is connected to all of them. I think what's really going to be interesting moving forward is just seeing how they approach these eliminations. Because will they continue to be nice and just be like, okay, Corey, here's your shot? Because I know I wouldn't. That's not what I would do at all. If I were a double agent next week and Corey doesn't have a skull, I'd be like, nah, Corey, you're not going down. House votes someone down, and we're gonna throw like the biggest competitor at them. And we're gonna get too heavy. We're gonna have two heavy hitters go at each other, and one of them's gonna be out of here, so they're not running the final.
Yeah, I mean, Fessy versus CT should be everybody's dream of this final, but I almost feel like it's going to be forced to be Corey and Big T because to save this season, not save it, but save it in a production sense with all the non-creator eliminations and stuff like that, I think for them it just makes sense to have Corey and Big T both run next week because it worked itself out perfectly where they're just paired up together. So I do think that we're going to see that type of thing happen in this episode coming up. Maybe I'm wrong, but that is something that I think is going to happen. I think it's actually going to be taken a little bit out of the players' hands next week, which is going to prevent screwing Corey over, because I do agree with you. I think screwing Corey over is the smart move. Don't let him into a final. He could probably do very well in it. But make Fessy go against CT or make Fessy go against Darrell or something like that. But I do think that production might force their hand a little bit on this one and say, you don't have gold skulls. You haven't had a chance. This is your last time. Get in there and go.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? Especially with how TJ ended the episode of them just like telling them, you might think you know how things are going, but you don't. But he keeps saying that, and then everything happens exactly like we expect it to. So, who knows?
Yeah, and the only other thing that makes me think that this will happen next week is originally they were planning to do a 10-person final. There's 5 female gold skulls, there's 5 male gold skulls. So they're probably saying to themselves, okay, there's only going to be one more male elimination and one more female elimination. That's why I think next week's the perfect time for the double, because then everybody's like, great, we made it to the final. And then TJ says, no, you didn't. Now you got to do one more each. And I think that's the way it's going to play out. And this is going to be almost an equalizer of Corey and Big T. You don't have a choice. You're going in. But who are you going against? That's what it's going to come down to. So I don't think they're going to have a choice to kind of even things out, to make it as fair as you can possibly make it. I think that's probably what happens next week, with the illusion that if you win it, you're in the final, and then that ends up not being the case.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me.
Which then that also kind of makes the gold skulls useless, because then all you did was say, well, the two of you never went for a gold skull. And I always said, you need a gold skull to run my final. You got to run you got to win a challenge to get in my final. Okay, great. And now you never went down there. You never won a double agent to get yourself down there, but you're still going to get a chance to run for the gold skull anyway, because we're going to force that. So it kind of makes the gold skull pointless in the end.
Yeah, that's one of the things with the skull twist is, like, if you're having this requirement for people to do this to run channels, I know it's really just to make people like get into eliminations and stuff, but call a final when people don't have their skulls. Oh, you don't have a skull? Too bad. You're now eliminated. Because at this point, the season's almost too long, and it's just letting everyone get their gold skull.
And I wonder how it would have played out differently had there not been so many eliminations, or non-crater eliminations, because like if all the women who got eliminated at the beginning didn't have to get pulled from the game, how would this have been different? You know, like would it have worked itself out better where there would have been people who got screwed over? And TJ and everybody was fine with that. And there would have been people who had to go maybe 2 or 3 times into the arena already with a gold skull. And TJ and everybody would have been fine with that. I wonder if that was what their intention originally was. But with all the non-eliminations, you can't really fault Corey and Big T, because there have been 5 female crater eliminations this entire season. Or 6, because Natalie won the first one and then had to get pulled from the game. There have been 6 female eliminations this entire season. That is insane. So you can't really fault Big T and Corey for this. It's just the way it kind of shook out.
I mean, part of it just comes down to the fact that in other shows, we see when someone is evacuated from the game, like in Survivor, they don't have tribal council, right? They're like, oh no, we don't have tribal council because someone's already been pulled from the game. And that isn't because they want to like make it easier for everyone. They want to give everyone a break. It's because it's the best way to keep their timeline.
Yeah.
And that's what these eliminations or these evacuations and quits have done for this game, is it's really screwed up their timeline. And they just don't have an idea, or I don't think they had a great idea. Obviously, you never expect 6 people to be taken out of the game for non-elimination purposes. But there was probably a point where, I guess, like with Natalie's pull from the game, they should have been like, no one's getting eliminated this week.
Yeah.
Right?
But then
you can't do that with the gold skull twist.
Yeah.
Because you need them to run eliminations to get their gold skulls. So they kind of back themselves into a corner here where they're still trying to fill out this full episode run that they've been given, but they don't have the cast that they originally thought they had.
Yes, exactly. They don't actually have 30 people on this season. There were less than 30 who were able to compete the way that they anticipated when they made this cast. And so I think it totally disrupted the timeline. And you have to remember, in a show like Survivor, if somebody gets medevaced, that is still kind of in line with what the show of Survivor is, battling the elements, or at least what it used to be, battling the elements and things like that. The challenge is about the competitions. It's about the battle. And so if you have episodes without that, it's stale and it feels weird, because it's like, what did I just watch and why did I just watch it? So I do think that they need to keep not just their timeline as in order as they can, but they also need to keep the drama as high as they can, and they need to keep their audience as enthralled as they possibly can. So I think that it was unlucky in a lot of aspects for them this season. And I think it could still be a great Final Four episodes. It's just, what were we supposed to talk about for the hour that we watched tonight? There's nothing to talk about. Nothing really happened at all. There was a challenge. Fessy and Gabby hooked up. Anissa said, "Don't screw me over." And then they said, "Okay, great. You're going to go against each other and we're going to have 3 commercials in 15 minutes. It's crazy.
Yeah, and at least his elimination was almost more entertaining than some of the other eliminations we've watched recently.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like we had an Amber showdown again, right? We didn't have the totally lopsided one. And then Gabby pulling off that first round win was exciting. You're like, oh, maybe Gabby's got this. And she fought hard for that one. And then, like, you saw Nany kick it up a notch and just go hard in that second one. You're like, ooh, this is close. But then, like, the third match was so uneventful because it was just Nany got the ring first and then avoided Gabby.
Gabby was exhausted. She had nothing left in the tank. Yeah, and it was this was an interesting challenge. I liked this challenge. I thought this was a good one. I thought it was fun, and I think that Gabby and Nany were a good pairing for this. I just think Gabby is a sprinter and Nany's probably more of a marathon runner. That's really what it comes down to in this challenge. And so Gabby went out fast and hard, and then she wasn't able to hold on. And so Nany's able to defeat her. And yes, it's a boring last one, but also I felt like watching this. I was like, ooh, this is a challenge that I could win. I like this. This is something I could outrun people at. That's about the only chance I have in hell. Pretend I'm a running back and they're all linebackers. That's really all I have. So I thought it was interesting. I liked the way it played out, but it was the anticlimactic ending. And I guess the problem with the challenge is they don't really have the same benefit that other shows like Survivor have, where Survivor can switch things around. And they can make it so that the point at number 1 actually comes at 5 if it's more dramatic, because you're still getting the same reaction. Whereas in this show, it does have that linear feel. The rings are already on there. Like, these are things you're going to notice. Yeah. So I don't think they really had a choice, because definitely the third one should have been the first one that Nany won. So, anyway, so I'm trying to figure out how to talk for an hour, but I have messaged Sean privately and said, I don't think it's possible. So we're going to wrap this thing up around now. I don't really know what else there is to talk about. It was a really short episode. Annabelle not being here kind of takes away that third perspective. And this was an episode where it would have been nice to have a third perspective, because even though I think that there really was only one side to this story, it might have been nice to have at least 3 people who could take up. Oh my gosh, I just lost connection to my camera. I have no idea why. Anyway, I have no idea what's going on with my camera, what's going on with my computer. My computer is falling apart at the seams. You go to patreon.com/Survivor Specialist to help me get a new computer, because I do not know what's going on. This is an absolute disaster. It's driving me insane. It's just been the last 2 days. I don't know what happened. Anyway, all that being said, there wasn't much that happened in this one, which makes it a little bit tougher to talk about. But John, is there anything that we missed that you feel we should address, or that you just want to give as your parting words for your first episode as a challenge layup?
No, in this case, it's just a matter of, again, we're at a point where let's wait and see what happens. I'm really interested to see how Kyle responds to having Big T as a partner now, especially because they both are still really mad at CT for CT taking Cam. So hopefully that dynamic gives us a little more drama next week. Hopefully Nany and Anissa are a bit at it. Hopefully we don't have to hear Fessy talking about women anymore. Yeah. And it just gets more fun from here.
Yeah. And you know, SP fan says, talk about how funny Kyle is. I think Kyle's hilarious. I love it. But it's hard to build out another 20 minutes based around that. So all that being said, in the description, it says Annabelle was here. No, you are not blind. Annabelle really is not here. She did not realize it was an hour, and she likes to watch it on DVR. And so there you go. First world problems right there, watching it on DVR and missing it. But that's okay.
How else are you going to appreciate the 13 commercials in the hour?
Honestly, that's the only way to watch the challenge. Tonight's episode was 24 minutes long out of that hour. I swear that's how long it was. But all that being said, Alexa and I changed the brand overnight. We changed it to Just a Specialist. We've been talking about it for so long anyway. We should have done it earlier, but we didn't know how long we were going to go without Survivor, and we didn't know if we were actually going to be able to build this stuff out. So the Specialist, Phil and Alexa, Survivor Specialist is still the staple show. It's still prime time. But now we get the challenge layups, because I refuse to call us the challenge specialist. The Amazing Casuals now feels normal. And Movie Buff Specialist with myself and John does feel a lot more normal now too, and doesn't feel like it's an out of place afterthought that is just here to fill space. If you like movies, go listen to what we talked about last night, Barcelona and Darkman. Even if you've never seen those movies, it was still an interesting discussion, especially since Barcelona is about the most American movie that can be made, and John is not American, so that was a fun discussion between the two of us. Although he is American, he did tell me that, and Barcelona will also tell you that he is American. We just happen to steal that whole phrasing. So all that being said, become a patron, patreon.com/Survivor Specialist. And that's really all I got. It was an episode. It happened. I feel like the last 4 are going to be really, really good. I feel like they've really built themselves up. And that's it. John, thanks for joining. Annabelle, we missed you, but we'll see you next week. And that's it. Goodbye, everyone.